It began the way most nightmares do, vague, surreal, and easy to dismiss. But what do you do when the figure from your dream appears at your door, wearing the same mask and whispering your name? It started subtly, first with whispers at town gatherings, murmurs exchanged at school pickup lines, and late-night messages posted anonymously in online forums. A few people began describing similar dreams, unnerving but vague. A tall, faceless figure standing in the corner of a room. He wore a pristine white mask, smooth and blank, with deep black eyes painted on, emotionless yet eerily expressive. The masked man didn't move. He simply stood there, breathing slowly, watching. Every person who dreamed of him felt the same thing. Dread so thick it suffocated, and a strange pressure in their chest as if their bodies refused to obey. At first no one took it seriously. Dreams are dreams, after all, odd, shifting fragments that vanish with the morning light. But then more people came forward. A high school teacher recounted a dream where she woke up unable to move, her vision locked on the masked figure looming at the foot of her bed. A mechanic claimed he saw the man crouched just outside his bedroom window, the white mask barely visible behind the curtain. What alarmed them wasn't just the figure's presence, it was the similarity. Different people, different walks of life, all dreaming the same exact thing. By the end of the month, the town therapist, Dr. Celia Hartman, began documenting the phenomenon. She initially assumed it was a case of mass suggestion. Once one dream was described in enough detail, others could subconsciously adopt it. But the more she listened, the less confident she became. The dreams weren't just similar, they were identical in every detail. The man wore a dark, tattered coat that dragged along the ground. His mask never cracked or aged. A soft, static-like whisper filled the room when he appeared. Most disturbing of all, every dream ended the same way, the figure slowly turning his head and pointing directly at the dreamer. Then they would wake up, gasping for air, often drenched in sweat. Dr. Hartman attempted to map the accounts, wondering if there was a pattern, geographical, chronological, anything to suggest a cause. The results were confusing. The dreams seemed to appear randomly. Young children described him. So did elderly residents. Even people who hadn't spoken to each other in years recounted the same dream, with matching timestamps. Some experienced it once. Others, night after night. And every time the masked man got closer. One morning, the local librarian, Martha Ellison, didn't show up to work. It was unlike her, punctual and predictable to a fault. Her neighbor reported hearing strange noises the night before, a high-pitched hum followed by a soft knocking. The police were dispatched. What they found chilled them to the bone. Martha's front door was locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry. In her bedroom she lay dead on the bed, no signs of struggle, no bruises, no wounds. Just still. Her eyes were open, wide with terror, staring toward the corner of the room. Her hands were frozen mid-reach as if trying to grab something, or someone. The coroner listed the cause of death as cardiac arrest. But Martha had no history of heart issues. A note was found on her nightstand. It read, "He was closer this time. I think tomorrow I won't wake up." Her journal was even more unsettling. Multiple entries described the masked man, the whispering, the sensation of being watched even while awake. One line stood out, "When he pointed at me last night, I felt something inside me shift, like he had marked me." Panic began to grow. Town meetings were held. Some believed it was a psychological phenomenon, sleep paralysis manifesting in a shared hallucination. Others whispered darker theories. A spirit, a curse, something summoned or awakened. Dr. Hartman continued to collect testimonies, creating a file thicker than any she had ever worked with. Each story mirrored the last. Some people even sketched the masked man independently. The images were virtually identical. It was no longer possible to explain it away as mere suggestion. Children became afraid to sleep. Parents took turns staying awake, watching over their families at night. A few tried recording themselves, hoping to catch something, anything. Most recordings were uneventful. But one, from a college student who installed a night vision camera, showed something terrifying. Around 3:04 a.m., a shadowy figure appeared at the edge of the room. It didn't walk in. It materialized, slowly taking form. The white mask reflected faint green from the camera's night mode. For 30 seconds it stood there, unmoving. Then it tilted its head and raised its arm, pointing. The student woke up moments later, screaming. 2 days later he went missing. Fear settled like fog over the town. Dr. Hartman no longer dismissed the phenomenon as psychological. Something was happening, something real. Whether it was born from mass consciousness or something darker, she couldn't say. But one thing became increasingly clear. The masked man was no longer confined to the dream world. His presence was growing stronger. And everyone who saw him felt it in their bones. They were being watched, chosen, marked. The town hadn't had a murder in over a decade. Now people were dying in their sleep. No cause. No signs. Just a look of horror frozen on their faces, and dreams no one could escape. It began with a grainy photograph, a blur of a tall figure captured in the background of a security camera snapshot from a suburban porch. The image was posted anonymously online, accompanied by the caption, "He was real. I saw him. Just like in my dreams." At first, the post was dismissed as a prank. But then others came forward with similar footage. Each frame, though unclear, showed the same silhouette, impossibly tall, motionless, cloaked in shadows, wearing a white mask that reflected the faintest light. These images were taken from different homes across different neighborhoods, all at the same hour, 3:07 a.m. That time would come to haunt the town. Soon it wasn't just photos. A teenage boy, shaken and pale, uploaded a short video taken on his phone. In the clip, barely illuminated by his porch light, stood the masked man, still as a statue on the lawn facing the house. The video lasted less than a minute. The boy's breathing grows louder and more frantic until, with a sudden jolt, the masked man tilts his head, just slightly, and the video cuts off. The boy was found the next day, unconscious in his bedroom, lips moving wordlessly in his sleep, whispering the same syllables over and over again. "He's here. He's here. He's here." What terrified the town wasn't just that the dreams were real, it was that the masked man was choosing people. Those who dreamed of him soon started hearing static-filled phone calls at odd hours. No words, just the low, guttural hum that resembled the whispering from the nightmares. Some residents reported seeing the figure standing outside their windows in the middle of the night, always at the exact same time they remembered him appearing in their sleep. When the police were called, the masked man had already vanished. No footprints. No broken locks. Nothing. As more accounts poured in, a chilling pattern emerged. Every person who claimed to dream of the masked man, and then saw him while awake, disappeared or died within 72 hours. It didn't matter who they were. A waitress. A firefighter. A retired school principal. No one was immune. Some victims were found dead in their beds, eerily similar to Martha Ellison. Eyes open, hands clenched, mouth frozen in a silent scream. Others were simply gone, their homes left untouched, keys still in locks, dinner still on the stove. The police, overwhelmed and bewildered, had no leads. The chief of police publicly stated they were looking into the possibility of a sophisticated stalker. But the residents weren't convinced. How could a stalker invade dreams? How could he appear on camera, then vanish without a trace? Even the most skeptical were beginning to crack. News crews came and went, eager to exploit the hysteria, but none could explain the phenomenon. Scientists were contacted. Sleep specialists interviewed dozens of the affected. No one had answers. Some residents tried staying awake. Energy drinks flew off the shelves. Pharmacies ran out of caffeine pills. But eventually exhaustion won. And when they slept, he came. The masked man was no longer just a presence in nightmares. He had become an invader, a force breaking through the invisible boundary between consciousness and sleep. It was as if he fed on fear, growing stronger with every terrified breath, every scream muffled in the night. One local man, desperate and on the brink of a breakdown, set up a dozen motion-triggered cameras around his house. He stayed awake for 3 days straight, refusing to close his eyes. When he finally succumbed to sleep, the cameras recorded something that would change the narrative forever. At exactly 3:07 a.m., one of the backyard cameras captured the masked man walking out of the woods behind the house. He moved slowly, methodically, as if he had all the time in the world. He approached the window, pressed a hand against the glass, and stared inside. The man awoke seconds later, screaming. When he reviewed the footage, he called the police, but by the time they arrived, the figure had vanished again. He went public with the video. The town spiraled into full-blown terror. People began boarding up windows. Some packed up and left, hoping to outrun whatever curse or presence had taken hold. But the dreams didn't stop. Even those who left the town reported seeing the masked man again, on the road, in hotel rooms, in unfamiliar cities. His presence had become untethered, no longer confined by geography. Wherever his victims went, he followed. Dr. Hartman, now fully convinced something supernatural was at play, worked with a team of neurologists and dream researchers. They monitored a young woman named Elias, who had reported repeated visits from the masked man. Electrodes were attached to her scalp as she slept in a monitored facility. For the first hour, her vitals remained steady. Then suddenly her heart rate spiked. Her brain activity became erratic. She began whispering under her breath, then screaming. The room filled with a deafening screech as the monitoring equipment crashed. When the researchers stormed in, she was sitting upright, eyes wide, blood dripping from her nose. She kept repeating one word, outside. Security cameras later revealed that for a brief instant, the masked man was standing in the facility hallway, motionless, staring at the room before vanishing into thin air. It was no longer possible to deny the truth. The masked man was no longer bound by the dream. He had crossed into waking life, and he was hunting. The breakthrough came not from scientists or law enforcement, but from a local investigative journalist named Marla Quinn. While the rest of the town scrambled to find physical evidence or rational explanations, Marla turned to the past. She began researching regional folklore and historical records, searching for anything, no matter how strange, that might shed light on the terrifying figure haunting the community. It was in the dusty archives of a closed-down sanitarium's library that she found what would become the heart of the story, a forgotten case file from 1971 labeled, The Dusk Watcher Phenomenon. The file documented a series of psychiatric interviews with patients who, decades ago, reported nightmares eerily similar to the current ones. They all described a man in a white mask who appeared in their dreams, silently pointing at them as a shadowy chorus whispered unintelligible words. At the time, doctors chalked it up to shared delusions among patients who had been exposed to each other's stories. But one name appeared repeatedly throughout the notes: Elias Harrow, a reclusive man who lived just outside of town, known for his obsession with lucid dreaming, ritual sleep states, and astral projection. Marla dug deeper and discovered that Elias Harrow had been the leader of a small cult called the Veil of Sleep. According to scattered reports, the group believed that dreams were not mere subconscious expressions, but doorways, thin, fragile membranes between our world and a darker, older plane of existence. Harrow claimed he could pass through these barriers and enter others' dreams. He taught his followers how to strengthen their presence within the dream realm and how to become visible to others. Some even believed he succeeded. The cult operated out of an abandoned church on the edge of the forest, long since reduced to charred ruins by a mysterious fire in 1973. The blaze was reported to have occurred during a ritual referred to in Harrow's journals as the Waking Gate. No bodies were ever recovered. Elias Harrow was presumed dead, but no trace of him was ever found. The site remained untouched for decades, until 6 months ago when a group of urban explorers posted videos of themselves breaking into the ruins. In the video, one of the explorers unearthed a partially buried mask, smooth white with blackened sockets for eyes. They joked about it being creepy as hell, held it up to the camera and left it behind. That clip, viewed by thousands online, had faded into obscurity, until now. Marla watched the video again and again. Her blood went cold. The mask was identical to the one described in the nightmares. The correlation was undeniable. Within days of the video being posted, the first reports of the masked man in dreams began. It was as if something had been awakened, unsealed by the disturbance of the ritual site. Whether it was Harrow himself or something he had summoned, the result was clear. The veil between the dream world and reality had been torn, and something had slipped through. Dr. Hartman, now working closely with Marla, began to compare journal entries from current victims with the writings of Harrow's former followers. The symbols, the language, even the whispered phrases were nearly identical. They referred to a realm called the Hollow Veil, a dream world reflection of our own, inhabited by entities that feed on fear and thought. The masked man was not just a fragment of the human psyche. He was a conduit, a being capable of anchoring himself in both realms by establishing a connection with dreamers. The more fear he instilled, the stronger his foothold in the waking world. Some theorized that Elias Harrow had succeeded in transcending mortality, trapping his consciousness in this masked avatar. Others believed the ritual had gone horribly wrong, and that something else had taken Harrow's form. Regardless, one fact could no longer be ignored: the masked man was no longer simply watching. He was hunting with intent, marking individuals, tethering to them through dreams until he could appear in their physical space. Marla proposed a dangerous idea: to return to the ruins, this time with proper recording equipment and experts in paranormal investigation. Despite protests from the community, a team was assembled. They camped overnight, surrounding the site with cameras, motion sensors, and EMF detectors. For hours nothing happened. Then around 3:07 a.m. the temperature dropped. Every piece of equipment malfunctioned simultaneously. Static filled the air like a pulse, and one of the team members, a former soldier, began screaming in his sleep. The others found him thrashing violently, bleeding from his nose and ears. He shouted that the masked man was inside the ruins, waiting. As they tried to evacuate, one of the cameras caught a single frame, a white mask peering from the shadows of the stone archway. The soldier died 2 days later, eyes wide open, in the same paralyzed pose reported by earlier victims. The town had reached its breaking point. Families fled. Businesses closed. The few who remained lived in fear, desperate to avoid sleep. The masked man was no longer a myth, no longer a dream. He was a consequence of forgotten rituals, reckless curiosity, and a man who believed he could cross into nightmares and return. Elias Harrow had opened a door that could not be closed. And now whatever walked through it was still out there, masked, silent, and watching.